94.9 WDKB. It is time. It's time for our Small Business Development Workshop Series. It's in partnership with Kishwaukee College and Kishwaukee College, I should say, and Waubonsee Community College. I've got my good old colleague here, Dr. Jock Samis, joining us, and also our special guest. Dr. Jock, thanks for joining us today.
Always my pleasure, Sean.
Would you like to introduce our special guest for this month?
I would. What you see in front of you, or who you see in front of you, is actually Deborah Conrad, who is the Entrepreneur Mindset Profile Product Director for the Leadership Development Institute at Eckerd College, which is based in Florida. Now, prior to Eckerd, Deborah was a member of the Orlando-based Japanese Operations Department at the Golf Channel. So, Deborah, what we'd like to say is Ohio.
Ohio gozaimasu.
Oh, see, she always does that. When I give her a little Japanese, she comes back with a bunch of stuff.
That's why I let you introduce her, because there's no way I would have got that right.
It's a safer thing to do.
It was. You like how I delegated that? That was good. That was really good.
So we're talking about the EMP. So, Deborah, what does EMP stand for?
Well, yeah, you got that in the mouthful of my title. So first, thank you for having me today. And the EMP stands for the Entrepreneurial Mindset Profile.
That sounds very intriguing, Jock. What do you think?
Well, it is amazing because there seems to be a lot of different surveys out there for entrepreneurs. And this one doesn't tell you whether you should be an entrepreneur or shouldn't be an entrepreneur. It just tells you what your skills are, for example, and then how to use them to best to your advantage. Would you say that's right, Deborah, or am I totally off base?
You paid attention when you were becoming a certified practitioner, Jock. Yes.
And I've been certified for a lot of things, so I am certifiable, so thank you for that.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share this, Deborah. I'm going to help everybody try to understand this a little bit better. I'm going to share this screen,
Absolutely.
And you can kind of walk us through this.
Right. So as Jock mentioned, the EMP, or Entrepreneurial Mindset Profile, is a validated and reliable assessment tool. It's taken online, takes about 10 to 15 minutes to complete, and it compares your scores on skills and personality-based skills in relation to an entrepreneur norm group and a corporate manager norm group. So it sheds light on how best to take advantage of existing strengths and enhance skill sets, okay? This slide here tells you a little bit about what the EMP does and does not do. And as Jock mentioned, it's not going to tell you that, yes, you should be an entrepreneur, or you're going to be a good entrepreneur. It allows you to understand your own mindset and tendencies, improve dynamics, become more attractive to investors, and hone your organization's competitive edge. It's not going to be thumbs up or thumbs down on being an entrepreneur. There's no prescriptive for that. But what we do say is it is a strengths-based profile. So there's no pass or fail or good or bad. It's all contextual. Context is king.
And how long has this been around, Deborah?
It actually launched in 2013. So next year we'll be celebrating our 10-year anniversary.
Oh, nice. Okay. So it's not telling me if I should or if I shouldn't. It's telling me what skills I have. So and I don't know what your next slide is, so this could be fun for all of us. Look at this.
A mind reader, Jock.
As if we had this planned. Not at all. So let's take me, for example. My personality skill is I am very high in independence, which means I want to be independent. So how is this going to work to my advantage and disadvantage as an entrepreneur, for example?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we recommend before you look at your results is to give some thought. Do you have a goal or a challenge that you're currently facing? And take a look at the scales lists, right? You see 7 of them are personality, 7 of them are skills. And identify 1 or 2, maybe even 3, that are relevant to your context, okay? So which 2 or 3 might be important for you to meet your goal or overcome your challenge? So you mentioned you're high in independence. So that generally means that you like to work on your own independently as opposed to in a group. When it comes to how knowing where you fall on these scales comes into play, would be what's your context? What's your role? So, are you the founder of your organization and you perhaps need to be the one not just ideating, but maybe executing on certain things? Or are you working within a department or a group or team within your company or organization where maybe you're not the person in charge of ideation, but you're supposed to be focused on the future, budgeting or other things related to goals further away? Knowing what you bring to the table on these 14 scales that differentiated corporate managers and entrepreneurs when our researchers did the research on this is what will be helpful for you in your context. So for you, Jock, what may be a strength and something you want to leverage may not be the same for, say, Sean and his company.
All right, so let's say I want to hire my first employee, and I'm eyeing Sean for this position. Why? Because I am not a good judge of character. All right, but
Okay.
I'm a big believer in independence, and Sean comes to me and he keeps asking me questions, and I don't want that. So did I make a mistake by hiring Sean, or how do I use this to my advantage?
Well, one thing that we do recommend within organizations is that you give the opportunity, not for just yourself to take it, but if you have your employees take this. And I say employees because we do not use this for selection purposes. Okay. This is a development tool. So once you have people within your organization, that's when you can really sit down and look at, okay, what is it that I'm bringing and what does it mean for our collective team? And certified practitioners like yourself can run workshops or webinars or work with organizations to help their employees meet their goals and work on what's important to them. But in the example that you gave, this also helps in terms of some potential conflict. If you understand what your strengths are or areas for development are, and your employee who might be annoying you, you see their results and you talk about those, you might be able to better understand where you're each coming from and figure out, okay, who should be in charge of what? Because as I'm sure you know, having too many people who are, say, the idea generation people, too many cooks in the kitchen, right? You can be stepping on each other's toes and you can also be out of balance in terms of your team. So you also want to be able to find people with complementary strengths if you don't necessarily want to move the needle or develop in a certain area where you may find out that you're weaker.
Right. So we're all coming up with ideas, but nobody else is doing anything. So we have these
Exactly.
great ideas and we can't execute. All right.
Exactly.
So, I mean, did you see this used more often for a single entrepreneur or for teams or an organization? I mean, how is it used normally, if there is a
We
normal?
Well, it's funny you say that because it continues to evolve. We originally developed the assessment because the Leadership Development Institute at Eckerd College does a lot of assessment-based training. And when we had a company approach us, a client wanted to improve innovation within their organization. And there really wasn't anything on the market that could really benchmark and show that there's been some movement or development. And so we actually set about figuring out how to develop a tool, and out of that came the EMP. And so in terms of how it's being used, we thought it was going to be primarily corporate clients who were going to use this within. So maybe an HR manager is using it with their leadership team, or a manager of a department using it with their employees who are working on a particular project. But as it turns out, it's branched out way beyond that. We've got government and nonprofit agencies using it. We've got, SBDC, but other cities and states that have either SBDCs or organizations similar. I can tell you in St. Petersburg, we have what's called the Greenhouse, and they're the doorstep to entrepreneurship. It's an agreement between the city and the Chamber of Commerce on, helping our entrepreneurship ecosystem grow. But they have an entrepreneurial academy, so it's used in cohort programs, it's used one-on-one with coaching, and then a big component is in academia. As you can imagine, there are a lot of colleges and universities who are now offering entrepreneurship minors and majors, and they are incorporating this into classwork, because it's not only an individual assessment, but practitioners of the EMP, so folks who have gone through a certification process, are able to run what's called a group report and be able to look collectively at several people's mindsets and see what does that mean for the team.
Right. So, Sean, you took this, right?
I did, and as I listened to Deborah talk, I feel way smarter now than I did before I took the EMP.
And that's good, because we want you to answer honestly, Sean.
Well, now you know the results because I did take it. So I think I should have talked to you first and then took it.
I purposely did not look at your results. I'm going to leave that for Jack.
All right.
Well, should he have talked to us about it beforehand, Deborah?
Well, it would have been, if there had been time for, a feedback session. So a certified practitioner like yourself is able to sit down and, before revealing your results, kind of do what I had mentioned. Ask you, Sean, where do you think you score high? Where might you be a little bit lower? And then think about that goal or challenge, because as human nature does, we automatically want to look at the high scores and think, oh, high scores are good, low scores are bad. This assessment is not about, oh, what do I need to change about myself? It's meant to give you information and help you determine and explore what you want to do with that information. So you may determine that you were high in something that's not relevant to your role, in which case, okay, that's, something that you can use maybe for other goals or challenges. But for what's in front of you right now, if you find that you were lower and you may want to develop that, that's something that Jock, as a practitioner, could ask you questions about once you get your results back, because then it helps you really dig in and focus on what's important to your context.
Yeah, from taking the test, I think I feel like somebody could take the results from that and maybe help learn more about themselves. Like, you think, I'm really good at this, and then you may take this and find out maybe you're not so good at this. Maybe you're better over here. You thought you were better in one area, and I think that would help a business owner or a potential entrepreneur kind of develop their team, like thinking that I could do this. I know I'm really good at this, but then you take this assessment, that may not be the case. It may show you that the way you answered that doesn't really reflect what you thought it was before. So this could really help somebody, at least from taking it from my perspective. I could see how it could really help an entrepreneur build their team and start their business the right way, instead of going off with what they think is right and then finding out, boy, I'm really not good at ideas, or I'm really not good at taxes, or I'm, not anything in specific, Absolutely. But I'm not good at paperwork. I'm not good at those things. So.
And you're exactly right, because we don't necessarily get assigned tasks, because, again, for small business owners, absolutely everything needs to be done, right? But you want to plug in people who are strong in those areas, and you may determine that people on your team have strengths that aren't being leveraged. And wouldn't it be better if they are naturally strong and they enjoy those things to help your organization, as opposed to putting someone somewhere where they're not comfortable and aren't bringing you the most value to your team? And that's where it really gets interesting, when you plug into the group report and look collectively at your team to see, because sometimes there are strengths you didn't even realize that you had, like you said, Sean, or it will help alleviate some of that frustration. So earlier, what you were saying, Chuck, about the independence thing, we've experienced groups that maybe someone was very future focused, but the group itself, the majority of them weren't. And that one person was frustrated within their role because they were always saying, we need to schedule meetings and talk about this forecasting and be thinking further out, when everyone was being passionate about ideas or working on something, more in the immediate future, when they could have been leveraging that one person that was future focused. So it really is useful in helping you kind of map that out for your team and your organization.
But Deb, it's not telling us, yes, I should be an entrepreneur, or no, I shouldn't be an entrepreneur.
You're correct. And it is not a test. So Sean, just to go back to that earlier, it's an assessment. This is purely, I say it's the equivalent of taking a snapshot of where you're at right now and seeing on those, personality side and the skill scale side, where do you fall? And then compare that to entrepreneurs and corporate managers. And the difference that our researchers determined was that on all of the scales, except for one, the interpersonal sensitivity, entrepreneurs were always higher than the corporate managers. So that's when we're talking about having an entrepreneurial mindset. It's about the mindset there. And these are just 14 scales that showed the difference between those two types of individuals.
And I'm really glad you said that, Deborah, because, now Jock cannot give me any grief about passing or failing.
That's correct.
And I knew that was coming, but now afterwards, I feel so much better now.
Deb, can you put up that slide that has the criterion?
For the 14 scales, you mean?
Yes.
Sure. Hang on one second.
This is probably where I'm going to get it here. This is where it's coming.
Well, Sean, when she puts this up, can you pick what you think? And Deb, please help me with the language.
Sure.
What do you think your strongest, or where did you score highest compared to entrepreneurs and corporate managers, or lowest, whatever you think is easiest?
You're asking me that?
Yes, because I did take a look at the results, but I wasn't going to divulge them. But now I'm going to.
Here it comes. All right, so looking at the
personality scale, what do you think you were scored highest in?
I was probably scored highest under passion, maybe.
And that is absolutely correct. You were highest in passion. Deb, can you say something about that?
In terms of that's a broad question, Jock.
Exactly.
I think that's the point, Deborah.
We certainly want all entrepreneurs to have passion, right? Because we've all heard that if the passion isn't there, it's not going to work, because you are going to be building an organization of your own. If you can't instill that in your culture, that's a problem.
Right.
So.
All right. Sean, do you have where you think your low score was with the personality scale?
I think it's going to be on, is it nonconformity?
I don't remember, but I just wanted to hear what you had to say.
Yep, I knew it was coming somewhere along the line. So I suppose now you want me to jump over to the skill sale? Do you want me to do the skill bar?
Because I want you to tell me about the skill set where you scored the lowest, if we get it back.
Yeah, I'm going to actually share with you a full-on definition sheet here, so you can see how we define these scales.
Oh, don't give him any hints. That's not fair.
Oh, well,
since
he's still making a prediction.
Since she spent time in Japan, she's letting you look inside the kimono. Would that be correct?
Oh, now, behave yourself, Jack. All right, so there are the scales, but they also show you your definition, which will be helpful for your viewers as well.
Now, is it just me, or is that very small?
It's very small, so I'm not sure. The good part is I can't read that, so it's okay.
All right. Well, if we're looking specifically at the personality scales, I'll separate them. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better. I think I would. I don't know. He asked me which one I would be. I scored lowest at.
Yeah.
Well, if passion was the highest, I'm going to go with nonconformity, I
Yeah,
think.
guys, I said I don't remember. Aren't you guys listening? Go to the
The
skills.
skills.
Yes,
Now he
because I
wants me
do
to.
remember this one.
Oh, he remembers this one.
Your lowest.
You want my lowest on the skill set?
Yes, I do, because this surprised me actually.
Um,
And again, I'm
I'm
taking it out
gonna
of context.
I'm gonna say optimism.
Absolutely correct again, Mr. Lowe.
Oh,
He
wow.
kno- he knows himself, doesn't he, Deb?
It's like I took
So,
this. It's like I took this assessment.
aha. So, Sean, if you think about then your passion and your optimism, can you think of where those skills and personality traits may have manifested themselves to your benefit, where that's something that you can leverage because you know that you're stronger in those areas?
I mean, I feel because I pick those. I feel like I know that. I mean, I feel like my everyday actions kind of reflect those two things. You know, I'm very passionate about radio in our local community, so I think that's why we do so well here at that, because I'm really passionate about it. And if I didn't, I feel like if I didn't care, then we wouldn't be so successful. I could just be like, I'm going to put in my time and I'm going to go home. But no, when I go home, I'm still working. I'm still passionate about it because I care so much, which is why I picked the passionate part. The optimism part, I I think it's just because I always remain optimistic no matter how bad it is. You know, no matter what the level of where I am and where I need to get to, it may look like a mountain, but I still think, we can get there no matter what. So I always remain optimistic.
Well, so you bring up a really good point, and it ties into why is the entrepreneurial mindset even important, right? I know that the majority of the people who would be tuning into this program have an interest in small business. They may be thinking about entrepreneurship, or they may have already launched their business. But we really believe at the Leadership Development Institute that the entrepreneurial mindset is important for everybody, right? I mean, right now, we've got an unsettled global economy. We've got individuals and organizations that need to think differently. There are new challenges, and we've got to be able to reframe problems. I mean, think about COVID, right? Everybody was going to work up until, the beginning of March in 2020, and then everything changed on a dime where we all had to stay at home, but business, everything still had to continue. Parents had to figure out how to keep their kids educated, and people who had businesses had to figure out what to do about that. So when you think about those scales, nonconformity, it is important. You need to be able to think outside of the box, idea generation, the persistence. What you may have tried initially during COVID may not have worked, but you get back up on the horse and you try again. We believe that entrepreneurial mindset is important for everybody. And there was actually a study that Deloitte did that talked about companies who saw themselves as entrepreneurial. So if they felt that they were entrepreneurial, that they were creative and unique and innovative and willing to take risks, they outperformed peer organizations in growth, in productivity, and profitability over the previous 12 months. So it's just an example of how important the entrepreneurial mindset is for anybody.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. That I think people that have that entrepreneurial, yeah, that word. I think those people that have that mindset, they're successful because they treat the business like it's their own. Even though it's not, they treat it like it is. I know I do that here. And the other people I know that are in my peer group, they all do the same kind of thing. And those people seem successful for that reason, I think, because they treat no matter where they work like it's their own. And I think that's why it's so successful most times.
Absolutely. And so the EMP is just going to be a tool in helping you leverage your strengths and develop in areas where you may not be as strong. And Jock, I know you used it in the Business Growth Academy at the SBDC, correct?
Correct.
And
That is
so
correct.
you've got entrepreneurs now who have taken the EMP, and when you take the EMP, it comes with not only your results in the form of a feedback report, but it comes with a development guide as well as a 10-minute interpretive video. So you can kind of, if you're not working with a practitioner like Jock or taking part of a cohort program where there's a practitioner leading it, you can buy and take the EMP off of our website. And so that 10-minute video kind of walks you through, having you kind of pause and ask yourself some questions and doing some of those activities before, you really dig into your results. But then it comes with this development guide, which is rich in resources. It's got on each of those 14 scales suggestions for development. It defines whether you are strong or have a high score, a super high score, or a lower score. What does that mean? How can that look for the individual? And then recommended resources, There's an action planning guide in the back, so you can continuously improve and refer back to that. Because again, your context may change and you may have different responsibilities or take on a different job where it can be useful to look back and be able to use that development guide. But that personalized feedback report will show you where you are compared to the corporate manager and entrepreneur norm groups.
And a lot of it really depends upon where you are in your life, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Deb, can you put up the skills again? And
Sure.
I want to keep Sean on his toes. That's why I'm doing this. And while you're looking for that, I have to say Sean has proven how passionate he is. And I hate to give him compliments because it just doesn't work well. But last year he won the DeKalb Chamber of Commerce Business of the Year. Sean, what was it? Man of the Year?
Yep, that's what we won, Business of the Year.
That's fantastic.
And that's directly because of him. I mean, he's like James Brown, except he's alive, and he's a white man, but he's the hardest working man in showbiz, that's for sure. And he does have the same James Brown moves, so that's really good. But talking about this need to achieve, for me, when I was younger, that need to achieve was utmost in my mind. And when I took this, I guess a year and a half ago now, that need to achieve was not the overwhelming thing that I needed to do. I don't know if it's because I was complacent, probably not, because the passion was still there. But it was just that there was a satisfaction to where I was and what I could do. So this changes with time. Interpersonal sensitivity, yeah, that's really low for me, which I know is
interestingly. Well, but you'll notice that that's the one scale that has italicized font. And the reason for that is the other 13, when the researchers looked at these, found that the entrepreneurs were always higher in these skills and traits and behaviors compared to the corporate managers. But it was interpersonal sensitivity where it was flipped. It was the other way around, where the corporate managers were higher than the entrepreneurs. Jock, do you want to take a guess why?
Oh, I couldn't even imagine why that would be.
Sean?
No, I'm with Jock. I couldn't even imagine why that would be. But Deborah, I bet you could explain why that could be.
Well, you were talking both about your need to achieve and your passion, of which two are ones that a lot of entrepreneurs are very high on. And they have a tendency to be very focused on the business, do whatever needs to be done for the business. And therefore, maybe people's skills may not be the most important thing. And conversely, in the corporate world, especially in today's world, it can be a derailer if you don't have interpersonal sensitivity, and the organization can really bring that out in terms of rewarding people who do have interpersonal sensitivity and it being a problem for those who don't. So that is why that one is flipped. But the researchers decided to still keep it because it's something that we also believe that everybody does need, and it's an interesting talking point in terms of giving pause for the two different types of norm groups.
Yeah, it's interesting because I just thought of this for the first time, and I've seen this thing a few hundred times. I think of Ted Turner when they talked about his nameplate, where his nameplate was, he would have lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way. There's your interpersonal sensitivity. So
Perfect
good.
example.
Right.
Yep. True
So,
story.
so Sean's going to get his results. Sean's going to get the video. Sean's going to get um,
The
a
development guide.
the PDF of the development guide. Sean's going to get me whispering in his ear. Is there anything else that a person taking the EMP would get?
Well, they get those three components. Now, if you are working with a practitioner like yourself, you might be offering coaching sessions, or if you're going to then go into an organization and work with a team as opposed to just the individual. But in terms of those three things, it would be the feedback report or your results, the interpretive video, and that development guide. And I can show you real quick. Development guide. There you go. So again, it's really small, but it defines what the scale is. So in this case, it's execution, and it talks about what does it mean if I'm high, but what does it mean if I'm really high to the point where I may overplay this strength and it could be detrimental. And then it gets into if I'm lower and want to develop in this area, what are some things that I can do? So you have some concrete takeaways on what do I do with this information now? How do I leverage it to my advantage or for my team's advantage?
Yeah, the awareness that this brings you is just simply amazing to me. And it's not just your awareness, but it's also an awareness about your team members, which, you all want to be rowing in the same direction. And this is definitely what it will do. So, Deb, do you
Yeah.
want to put up that contact info there?
Sure. Yeah. So, as I had mentioned, anybody can come to our website and take the EMP. It's $45. You immediately get a link to take it. And as soon as you complete the assessment, you would get those three things: your feedback report, the video, and the development guide. If any of your viewers are interested in possibly becoming certified, so that would be for anybody, whether it's an educator, an HR professional, psychologist, people like yourself, Jack, who are running entrepreneurial programs, coaches and consultants. We do run a certification workshop about every 2 months, and the whole process takes about 8 to 10 hours, but there's a 3 hour and 45-minute workshop where we offer certification, and then the practitioner can administer to other people and do debrief sessions or feedback sessions using the EMP.
Great. Sean, any last parting remarks?
No, I just definitely wanted to say that, Deborah, you've been one of the best guests that we've had on here.
Oh, thank
Very
you.
informative, and you are such a professional in what you're doing here. I really enjoyed this session very much. Not that I don't enjoy the other ones, but this one, you definitely having me take that assessment. I really like doing it. So this has been one of really the only most interactive one we had. So I highly encourage people to take this assessment, and especially if you're thinking about being in business, or maybe even you want to move up in your current position. I think this assessment would really help you a lot by just kind of giving you a deep dive into yourself. And I was blown away by it.
Sean, we should get the staff of WDKB to take this, because that would be very interesting.
Especially leadership teams.
I couldn't agree more, Deb.
Well, you know how to contact us, Sean.
I do.
All right, Deb, any
Thank you
parting
so
words?
much. No, I look forward to speaking to anybody who's interested in learning more about the assessment or certification. Thanks
Deborah,
for the
thank you so much.
opportunity.
Sean is absolutely right. This was one of the best sessions we've had.
Thank you.
All right. It is our small business development webinar series. Deborah, thanks so much for joining us. Dr. Jock, my esteemed colleague, as always, thank you for joining us as well.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. It's the Small Business Development Webinar Series with 94.9 WDKB.